Picture this. It's 3:47 a.m. on a cold December night in 1988. The fluorescent lights of Mercy General Hospital cast their sterile glow across empty corridors. Dr. Margaret Chen, a 34-year-old emergency physician, is making her final rounds of the night shift. Her footsteps echo through the silence as she walks toward the elevator, her white coat pristine, her stethoscope draped around her neck like it had been for the past 8 years of her medical career. But Dr. Chen would never complete those rounds. By sunrise, she had vanished without a trace from a locked hospital, leaving behind only questions that would haunt the small city of Millbrook, Oregon, for the next 35 years. What happened in those final hours before dawn? How does a respected doctor simply disappear from a building with security cameras and multiple witnesses? And why did it take 3.5 decades for the truth to finally surface in the most unexpected place imaginable? If you're fascinated by mysteries that defy explanation, hit that subscribe button right now, because today's case will challenge everything you think you know about disappearances. I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll understand why the discovery made in 2023 sent shockwaves through the entire medical community and reopened a case that everyone thought had gone cold forever. Margaret Chen wasn't just another doctor. She was the kind of physician who remembered every patient's name, who stayed late to comfort grieving families, who never missed a birthday party for her colleagues' children. Born in Portland to Taiwanese immigrants, Margaret had fought tooth and nail to get through medical school, working 3 jobs while maintaining a perfect GPA. Her parents, David and Linda Chen, had sacrificed everything to give their only daughter the American dream they'd crossed an ocean to find. Standing at 5 feet 4 inches, with shoulder-length, black hair that she always wore pulled back in a neat ponytail during her shifts, Margaret had gentle brown eyes that patients said made them feel safe even in their darkest moments. She had a distinctive laugh that could be heard echoing through the hospital corridors. Colleagues described it as infectious, the kind of sound that could lift the spirits of even the most exhausted medical staff during those brutal overnight shifts. Margaret lived alone in a modest 2-bedroom apartment just 6 blocks from Mercy General, a deliberate choice that allowed her to walk to work even during Oregon's infamous winter storms. Her neighbors in the Riverside Gardens complex knew her as the quiet doctor who always said hello, who picked up packages for elderly Mrs. Rodriguez next door, and who could occasionally be seen tending to a small herb garden on her balcony during the warmer months. Her daily routine was as predictable as clockwork. Margaret worked the night shift Thursday through Sunday, arriving at the hospital precisely at 10:45 p.m. for the 11 p.m. shift change. She'd stop by the vending machine on the 2nd floor for a black coffee and a pack of saltine crackers, the same snack she'd eaten during medical school when money was tight, a habit she never broke even after becoming a successful physician. Her colleagues often joked that you could set your watch by Dr. Chen's arrivals and departures. But Margaret wasn't all work and no play. She played violin in the Millbrook Community Orchestra, performing at their monthly concerts at the historic Paramount Theater. She was learning to speak Spanish to better communicate with the growing Hispanic population in Millbrook. Every Tuesday morning after her shift ended, she volunteered at the free clinic downtown, providing medical care to those who couldn't afford it. Margaret Chen was woven into the very fabric of her community in ways that made her sudden disappearance all the more incomprehensible. Her personal life was quietly content. She'd been dating Robert Martinez, a high school chemistry teacher, for about 18 months. Nothing serious yet, but her best friend and fellow physician, Dr. Sarah Williams, often teased Margaret that Robert might be the one. Margaret would blush and change the subject, but those who knew her well could see the happiness in her eyes when his name came up in conversation. On December 15th, 1988, Margaret began what would become her final shift at Mercy General exactly as she had hundreds of times before. The weather that Thursday evening was typical for mid-December in Oregon, a steady drizzle that had been falling since noon, with temperatures hovering around 38 degrees. The kind of night where the emergency room typically stayed busy with minor accidents and seasonal ailments. Margaret arrived at 10:43 p.m., 2 minutes earlier than usual. Security footage from the main entrance shows her walking through the automatic doors, shaking raindrops from her dark blue umbrella. She's wearing her favorite navy peacoat over her hospital scrubs, her medical bag slung over her left shoulder. The timestamp on the video reads 22:43:17, a detail that would become crucial to investigators trying to piece together her final hours. The night shift at Mercy General that December evening included Margaret, 2 nurses, Patricia Walsh and Michael Kim, 1 security guard, James T. Fletcher, and the overnight janitor, Carlos Rivera. It was a skeleton crew, typical for the midweek overnight shift at a 180-bed hospital that served a community of just 34,000 people. Margaret's first few hours passed normally. The emergency department saw a 16-year-old with a suspected broken wrist from a skateboarding accident, an elderly man experiencing chest pains that turned out to be severe heartburn, and a young mother whose toddler had developed a BI, high fever. Margaret handled each case with her characteristic calm competence, her gentle bedside manner evident even on the hospital's security cameras. At 1:23 a.m., Margaret treated what would be her final patient of the night, a 45-year-old construction worker named Tom Bradley, who had accidentally nail-gunned through his thumb while working on a late-night renovation project. The injury required 12 stitches and a tetanus shot. Security footage shows Margaret walking, Mr. Bradley to the exit at 2:17 a.m., pointing toward the pharmacy where he could fill his prescription for antibiotics in the morning. After Mr. Bradley's departure, the hospital settled into the quiet hours that medical professionals call the dead zone, those pre-dawn moments when even the emergency department tends to empty out. Margaret was seen on camera at 2:31 a.m. refilling her coffee cup in the break room. Nurse Patricia Walsh later told investigators that Margaret seemed completely normal during their brief conversation about the upcoming Christmas party. At 3:15 a.m., Margaret began her standard end-of-shift routine. She updated patient charts, completed her medication logs, and prepared the handover notes for the day shift physician who would arrive at 7 a.m. Security cameras captured her moving between the nurse's station, the supply closet, and various patient rooms as she completed her final responsibilities. The last confirmed sighting of Dr. Margaret Chen was at 3:47 a.m. on camera number 7, which monitored the main corridor on the second floor. She's walking toward the elevator bank, her white coat unbuttoned, a manila folder in her right hand. The timestamp reads 03:47:23. She presses the elevator call button, waits for approximately 30 seconds, then steps into elevator car number 2 as the doors open. That elevator was equipped with a security camera, but here's where the story takes its first chilling turn. The camera inside elevator number 2 had been experiencing intermittent technical problems for 3 weeks, according to maintenance records. It would work normally for hours, then suddenly go dark for periods ranging from minutes to several hours. On the night of December 15th, the camera malfunctioned at exactly 3:48 a.m., 1 minute after Margaret stepped inside. Margaret never arrived at the first floor. She never exited through the main lobby, the emergency department entrance, or any of the hospital's 6 other exits, all of which were monitored by security cameras that were working perfectly that night. When the day shift physician, Dr. Robert Kim, arrived at 6:45 a.m. and found Margaret's handover notes incomplete and her personal belongings still in her locker, he initially assumed she'd been called away to handle an emergency. But Margaret Chen had simply vanished into thin air. When Margaret failed to show up for her scheduled lunch date with her friend Sarah at noon the next day, Dr. Williams called the hospital. That's when the horrifying realization set in. Nobody had seen Dr. Margaret Chen since she stepped into that elevator at 3:47 a.m., nearly 12 hours earlier. Hospital Administrator Janet Morrison immediately called the Millbrook Police Department. Detective Ray Patterson, a 20-year veteran of the force, arrived at Mercy General within 30 minutes. What he found defied all logic and experience. The hospital had been locked down since Margaret's disappearance was discovered. Every exit was secured. Every room had been checked. Every possible hiding place had been searched. Dr. Margaret Chen was simply gone. The initial investigation revealed details that made the case even more baffling. The elevator that Margaret had entered was found stopped on the basement level, its doors open, completely empty. The basement of Mercy General housed the hospital's mechanical systems, storage areas, and the morgue. It was accessible only by elevator or through a locked stairwell that required a key card. A key card that Margaret didn't possess. Detective Patterson's team conducted a floor-by-floor search of the entire hospital. They interviewed every staff member who had been on duty that night. Security guard James Fletcher confirmed that all exits had remained locked and alarmed throughout his shift. The alarm system logs showed no breaches. Carlos Rivera, the janitor, had been working in the East Wing all night and hadn't seen Margaret after her 2:31 a.m. coffee refill. The most puzzling piece of evidence was Margaret's personal belongings. Her purse, containing her wallet, keys, and identification, was found in her assigned locker, exactly where she always left it during her shifts. Her winter coat hung on the back of her office chair. Her car, a 1985 Toyota Camry, sat untouched in the hospital parking lot, a thin layer of ice covering the windshield. Margaret's family was devastated and bewildered. Her parents, David and Linda Chen, couldn't understand how their daughter could simply disappear from her workplace. "Margaret was the most responsible person I've ever known," her father told reporters. "She would never just leave without telling someone. Something terrible has happened to our daughter." Robert Martinez, Margaret's boyfriend, provided police with a crucial timeline. He had spoken to Margaret by phone at 9:45 p.m. on December 15th, just before she left for work. "She was in a good mood," he remembered. "We made plans to see a movie on Saturday. She was excited about the Christmas concert with the orchestra. Everything was completely normal." The Millbrook community rallied around the Chen family with an intensity that surprised even longtime residents. Hundreds of volunteers joined search parties that combed the forests and riverbanks surrounding the city. Local businesses donated food and supplies. The Paramount Theater, where Margaret performed with the community orchestra, held a benefit concert that raised over $15,000 for the reward fund. But despite all the community support and media attention, the investigation hit wall after wall. Police consulted with elevator technicians, security experts, and even brought in FBI consultants who specialized in missing persons cases. Every theory led to dead ends. Could Margaret have voluntarily disappeared? Detective Patterson explored this possibility thoroughly, but found no evidence of depression, financial problems, or any reason Margaret would want to start a new life elsewhere. Her bank accounts remained untouched. Her apartment showed no signs of hasty packing. And everyone who knew her insisted that voluntary disappearance was completely out of character. Had Margaret been abducted? The hospital's security system made this seem impossible. Every entrance and exit was monitored, and there was no evidence of anyone else being in the hospital who shouldn't have been there. The few staff members present all had solid alibis and had worked with Margaret for years without incident. Could Margaret have suffered some kind of medical emergency or accident within the hospital? Search teams had examined every inch of the building, including areas that required special access. Hospital maintenance crews checked all mechanical spaces, air ducts, and even the old tunnel system that connected to the original hospital building constructed in 1952. Nothing. The case consumed Detective Patterson's career. Even after retiring in 2003, he continued to review the files, hoping to spot something that had been missed. The Margaret Chen case was the one that got away, he admitted in a 2010 interview. In 30 years of police work, I never encountered anything that defied explanation the way this did. As months turned into years, the initial intensity of the investigation gradually faded. The reward fund grew to $50,000, but no credible tips ever materialized. Margaret's parents aged visibly under the strain of not knowing what had happened to their daughter. Her mother, Linda, developed severe anxiety and rarely left the house. Her father, David, became obsessed with the case, creating elaborate timelines and theories that he would share with anyone willing to listen. Robert Martinez eventually moved away from Millbrook, unable to cope with the constant reminders of his missing girlfriend. Dr. Sarah Williams left Mercy General in 1991, telling colleagues that working there had become too painful. The hospital itself struggled with the stigma of the unsolved disappearance. Staff turnover increased, and some patients requested transfers to other facilities. By 1995, the case had been moved to the cold case files. Detective Patterson's successor, Detective Maria Santos, conducted a thorough review in 1998 on the 10-year anniversary of Margaret's disappearance, but found no new leads. The Chen family continued to hold annual memorial services, hoping that someone, somewhere, might remember a crucial detail that could break the case open. The years passed with excruciating slowness for those who had known and loved Margaret Chen. Her parents never moved from their house on Maple Street, maintaining Margaret's childhood bedroom exactly as she had left it, just in case she somehow returned. The community orchestra dedicated their annual Christmas concert to Margaret's memory for 15 consecutive years. New theories emerged periodically. In 2001, a psychic claimed to have visions of Margaret trapped in an underground chamber beneath the hospital. Ground-penetrating radar searches found nothing. In 2008, a former hospital employee came forward claiming to have seen suspicious activity on the night Margaret disappeared, but his story fell apart under scrutiny when investigators realized he had actually quit his job 2 weeks before December 15, 1988. The case took on an almost mythical quality in Millbrook. Local high school students would dare each other to spend time alone in the hospital elevator after dark. Urban legends grew around the story. Some claimed Margaret's ghost could be seen wandering the hospital corridors. Others insisted that she had discovered something sinister and was murdered to keep her quiet. But perhaps the cruelest aspect of Margaret's disappearance was how it affected her elderly parents as they entered their final years. David Chen suffered a stroke in 2016 and never fully recovered. Linda Chen, now in her 80s and suffering from dementia, would sometimes forget that Margaret was missing and ask visitors when her daughter would be coming home from the hospital. The case seemed destined to remain forever, unsolved, another tragic mystery that would be filed away and forgotten. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. In March 2023, 35 years after Margaret Chen vanished, Mercy General Hospital underwent a major renovation project. The basement level, which had been largely unused for storage since the hospital expanded in 1995, was being converted into a modern diagnostic imaging center. The construction crew, led by contractor Mike Stevens, began demolishing walls and removing outdated mechanical equipment that had been abandoned for decades. On March 17, 2023, a registered nurse named Jennifer Walsh, the daughter of Patricia Walsh, who had worked alongside Margaret on that fateful December night, was volunteering to help catalog old medical equipment before it was discarded. Jennifer had grown up hearing about the mysterious Dr. Chen, and working at Mercy General had always felt like carrying on her mother's legacy. While sorting through boxes of outdated files in a storage room that hadn't been opened in years, Jennifer noticed something unusual. Behind a massive old boiler that was scheduled for removal, there appeared to be a small gap in the wall, a space that shouldn't have existed according to the hospital's architectural plans. Jennifer called over Mike Stevens, the contractor. Using flashlights, they peered into the gap and discovered what appeared to be a narrow passage, roughly 3 feet wide, that extended back into darkness. Stevens initially assumed it was some kind of maintenance access that had been forgotten over the decades, but something about the space felt different. The passage led to a small, hidden room, approximately 8 feet by 10 feet, that was completely absent from any hospital blueprints or maintenance records. The room appeared to have been sealed off sometime in the distant past, accessible only through the narrow passage that had been concealed behind the boiler. What Jennifer Walsh found in that hidden room made her blood run cold. Sitting in a corner of the space, still wearing a white medical coat, were the skeletal remains of a woman. Next to the skeleton lay a hospital ID badge that, despite 35 years of darkness and humidity, was still legible. Dr. Margaret Chen, M.D., Emergency Medicine, Mercy General Hospital. The discovery sent shockwaves through Millbrook and beyond. The FBI's cold case unit was immediately called in, along with forensic anthropologists from the state crime lab. The hidden room was treated as an active crime scene, sealed off while investigators worked to understand how Margaret had ended up in a space that officially didn't exist. Dr. Amanda Rodriguez, the forensic anthropologist assigned to the case, made several crucial determinations. The skeletal remains were consistent with an Asian female, approximately 30 to 35 years old, matching Margaret's description perfectly. More importantly, Dr. Rodriguez found evidence of significant blunt force trauma to the skull. Margaret Chen had been murdered. But the mystery deepened when investigators began trying to understand the hidden room itself. Architectural records showed that the space should have been filled with concrete as part of the hospital's foundation. Construction documents from 1952, when the hospital was built, made no mention of any hidden chambers or passages. The breakthrough came when investigators discovered the narrow passage that Jennifer Walsh had found actually connected to the old elevator shaft from the 1950s, an elevator that had been decommissioned and sealed when the hospital was renovated in 1963. Someone with intimate knowledge of the hospital's hidden infrastructure had used this forgotten access point to create the perfect hiding place. Further investigation revealed that the concealed room had been used for years, possibly decades. Investigators found evidence of multiple visits, old food containers, blankets, and disturbing personal items that suggested someone had been using the space as a private retreat. Most chilling of all, they discovered a journal filled with detailed observations about hospital staff, their schedules, their personal lives, and their daily routines. Margaret Chen's name appeared throughout the journal's final entries. The journal revealed that Margaret had been stalked for months by Someone who knew her every move. Someone who had access to areas of the hospital that most staff never saw. The final entry, dated December 14, 1988, one day before Margaret's disappearance, contained a chilling passage. Tomorrow night, when she takes the elevator, she'll finally understand what she means to me. She'll never leave me again. The handwriting in the journal was eventually matched to Carlos Rivera, the hospital janitor who had been working the night. Margaret disappeared. Rivera had died in 1997, taking his secrets with him to the grave. But the journal entries painted a disturbing picture of a man who had become obsessed with Dr. Chen, watching her from the shadows, learning her routines, and ultimately deciding that if he couldn't have her, no one could. Investigators pieced together what had happened on that December night in 1988. Rivera had somehow intercepted Margaret when she took the elevator, perhaps by manipulating the building's electrical systems, which would have been within his capabilities as the maintenance staff. He had used his knowledge of the hospital's hidden passages to bring her to the secret room, where he had murdered her during what was likely an attempted assault. The security camera in the elevator had not malfunctioned randomly that night. Rivera had deliberately sabotaged it to cover his crime. For 35 years, Margaret Chen had been entombed just 50 feet below where her colleagues worked, where her parents had come to pray, where the community had held memorial services in her honor. The revelation that Margaret's killer had been hiding in plain sight all along sent shockwaves through everyone who had known him. Carlos Rivera had been described by colleagues as quiet and reliable. He had even participated in the early search efforts for Margaret, helping to check storage areas and mechanical rooms, all while knowing exactly where her body was hidden. Rivera's personnel file revealed that he had started working at Mercy General just 6 months before Margaret's disappearance. Previous employers described him as a loner who often seemed overly interested in female co-workers, but no one had ever reported any threatening behavior. The perfect predator, hiding behind a mundane job and a quiet demeanor. For Margaret's surviving family members, the discovery brought a complex mixture of relief and renewed grief. David Chen had died in 2018, never learning what had happened to his daughter. Linda Chen, now 87 and in the advanced stages of dementia, could not fully comprehend that her daughter had finally been found. But for others who had loved Margaret, the revelation provided a measure of closure that had seemed impossible for 35 years. Dr. Sarah Williams, now in her 70s, traveled back to Millbrook for Margaret's funeral, the funeral that should have happened in 1988. "At least now we know," she said through tears. "Margaret can finally rest in peace." The case of Dr. Margaret Chen stands as a chilling reminder that evil can hide in the most ordinary places, wearing the most unremarkable faces. Carlos Rivera worked alongside Margaret's colleagues for years after her death, attending company parties, receiving performance evaluations, all while carrying the secret of where her body was hidden. But perhaps the most haunting aspect of this case is how close Margaret came to being found much sooner. In 1995, during a minor renovation project, workers had actually moved the old boiler that concealed the entrance to Rivera's hiding place. They had noticed the gap in the wall, but assumed it was just a construction irregularity. If they had investigated just a few feet further, Margaret might have been found 28 years earlier. The hidden room has since been filled with concrete and permanently sealed. Mercy General Hospital has installed state-of-the-art security systems and conducts regular structural surveys to ensure no other hidden spaces exist. But for those who knew Margaret Chen, no security upgrade can erase the knowledge that she spent 35 years trapped in darkness, just footsteps away from the people who loved her, and never stopped searching. Today, a memorial garden outside Mercy General Hospital bears Margaret's name, along with a bronze plaque that reads, Dr. Margaret Chen, healer, friend, daughter, finally at peace. The Millbrook Community Orchestra still dedicates their annual Christmas concert to her memory, a tradition that will continue as long as the orchestra exists. The case officially closed in 2023, but questions remain. How many other Carlos Riveras are out there, watching, waiting, hiding behind ordinary jobs and unremarkable faces? How many other Margaret Chens are still waiting to be found? As we remember Dr. Margaret Chen, let's not forget the lesson her story teaches us, that evil often wears a familiar face, that monsters can clock in and out like any other employee, and that sometimes the person you trust to keep you safe is the very person you should fear most. Margaret Chen deserved so much more than the fate that befell her that December night. She deserved to see her parents grow old, to marry Robert Martinez, to save countless more lives, to laugh that infectious laugh in hospital corridors for decades to come. Instead, her story serves as a stark reminder that in this world, even the most innocent among us are not safe from those who choose to embrace darkness. The mystery of Dr. Margaret Chen's disappearance may be solved, but her memory lives on as a testament to the good that exists in this world, and a warning about the evil that sometimes hides right beside it.